Welcome back to part 3 of Lazy Afternoon. I'm going to work a little bit on the very front of the face using Derwent P240 Violet Oxide to add a little bit more fur to the front of her face. This is a female black-faced wolf. Her name is Dharma. Beautiful, beautiful wolf. I love to paint her. I'm using very light pressure. We're working on the side of the face now. We're adding more warm colors. This is Carbothello 675 French Red Ochre. We'll also be using 670 Burnt Sienna. This is 105 Ivory. You could also use the Pitt 103 Ivory. And here I'm using the Cretacolor Black Lead to add dark color in between these hairs. This is, I know to some of you may seem tedious, but this attention to detail is what's going to set your work apart and make your wolf look beautiful. If you get tired, take a break and then come back to it. I'm pulling more hair up into the background with the Carbothello 770 Payne's Gray. And I'm using the black Cretacolor. Just pulling them straight up with as fine a line as I can get with my tools. I'm using the Cretacolor again. I'm also from time to time using one of my blending sponges that has a sharp edge to kind of blend some of that color into the background. This is the thick 635 Beaster. I'm blending the background a bit. It's a dark brown. Just pulling those hair up. Generally, they're curving to the left. Now you can see I'm holding the pencil and kind of pushing to get the strokes and the hair up there. But vary the direction. I don't want them all curving to the left, but in general they curve to the left. But I have a few that are going to the right. Using the Cretacolor And this is the Burnt Ochre, the Pit 187. So I'm just combining all of my darker pencils to pull this fur up into the background. I've sped this section up a bit for you while I pull those hair up. Now I've turned my painting upside down. This way I can more easily add more hair and get it more detailed. Right now I'm using the Carbothello 390 Prussian Blue, Carbothello 750 Black, putting a few lighter strokes in with the Carbothello 720 Coal Gray. I'm just adding a lot of variety to my picture. I'm using the 720 to add some of the fur that's coming out from behind the ear on the back. Now as we work on the back, the hair is going to start to turn downward, and we must be mindful of that. So now I'm using my Pitt 230. The hair is a bit longer, and I'm angling it what will be downward on the wolf's back. Also pay attention to the length of fur. In this area, the hair is much shorter, and so the strokes are shorter. And now it gets longer, but see, I'm putting in the little short strokes that go up the back into the longer hair. Paying attention to all these little details is what's going to set your work apart. This is the 770 Payne's Gray. I'm just making those strokes, pulling them out. This is my 750 black. I'm using a medium gray 706 Carbothello, gray number 4. And again, Pitt 187 burnt ochre. Adding some 103 ivory, Pitt pastel. Work carefully and thoughtfully adding all these hairs. Use warmer color pastel pencils to add the warmer hair and gray colors in the cooler areas, and use your photo for reference. Blend your colors together with the number 2 pointed color shaper or a cotton Q-tip. This is the violet oxide, the Derwent 240. I just encourage you to take your time. She's already looking fantastic, so just keep working. Now I'm using the 411 burnt sienna to add some warm color into her fur. Using the edge of it. As the winter changes to summer, the fur on the animal gets warmer. The sunlight bleaches it and gives it a warmer tone, which is where this is coming from. Back to the 230, adding some more little hair. Now I've flipped my wolf over. She's upright again. And I'm using a 685 Carbothello Sienna to add some little warmer hairs. And this is the red, French red ochre 675 Carbothello and the 230 gray. Working back and forth between all of these different colors, making the hair longer in some areas and shorter in others. Blending it with my finger. Now I've decided to take the Rembrandt 411.3 and add some warmer splotches into the back. So I'm just applying color and blending it with my finger, and then we can go over that with our pencils to add warmer hair in this area. Now I'm using the 700.5 Rembrandt Black. It's kind of buried in my hand there. I'm using it on the end to add some blacker pastel next to the brown. And I'm adding a little bit more brown. I'm finger blending it. And I'm going to use my pencils to add more fur. I'm adding more black with my 700.5. And adding more fur. This is the gray, the Pitt 230 coal gray. Little short hairs. Now I'm using my sponge to very lightly and very carefully kind of blend those hair into the body of the wolf. You can use your fingers, you can use Q-tips. I'm using the sponge, but it's very light pressure. Now I'm going to use the 526 Giraud on the edge to add some very deep black, which, as we talked about before, gives depth to the back of the wolf. So I'm just putting it, as you can see, in little places, and I'll carefully blend it in. Now I'm adding quite a bit of that Giraud on the back. And then we'll go back to adding fur. It's the Pitt 187 Burnt Ochre. And continuing to add some dark value with the Giraud in between the hairs. I think that really helps the fur to pop. It would be very boring if you just drew a bunch of little hairs on there. The black really gives definition to this, and I love the way it's looking, so I'm going to keep working in that direction. So I go back and forth, adjusting my values and my hair until I get it just like I want it. So I'm adding Giraud, and then I'll go back to adding more hair. I have flipped my wolf up so that I can work on the remainder of her back without more easily for my hand. I'm pulling hairs into the background. I'm going to leave this in real time, the whole recording, so you can see how I do this. I'm using the Cretacolor black lead, pulling those final hairs on her back into the background. Then using my pits and Cretacolors to add the fur. I'm very happy with my wolf and the way she's looking. It pays off to go slow. Take your time. This is the edge of the Rembrandt 700.5 black and the Violet Oxide 240 Derwent. And that's quite pretty to put that. It's one of my favorite colors. Gray purple. It's a very useful color. And then I'm blending it with my sponge blender. Now I get my sponges. They're made by Soft Tools, and I like them quite a bit, especially the ones with the edge on them, so that I can take that edge and just blend the fur. I'm using the edge of the light blue pastel, which is 570.9 phthalo blue, to work into the back of the wolf and using the blender. So we're blending the background into the edges of those hairs to make a nice transition. And I'm going to add more hair with, this is my 770 Carbothello Payne's Gray. You can see I'm darkening up that area, and I'm going to blend that as we get out to the very edge of the wolf. I'm using Giraud to add darker hair. There's less definition out at this edge, so I'm adding strokes with the dark black. Looks real nice. And adding in lighter hair with the violet oxide. It's a very nice effect. It shows light hair, but it doesn't pull the eye too much. I'm adding some more 411.5 Rembrandt, blending that in with my finger. And then I'm going to use a 706 Carbothello Gray number 4, which is like a medium value, to add fur here. Again, I don't want it to pull the eye by being too bright. The hair in this area is also longer. It looks very pretty. I've added a few highlights with the Carbothello 720. And I'm also careful of the direction that the fur is going in. I've turned my painting back around and I've zoomed in to the log area. Now that we're done with the wolf, it's time to work on the log. Now I'm going to base coat the log with these colors. Right now I'm using 505.8, which is ultra blue light. We're also going to be using lighter colors and darker colors as we go along. And we're going to add wood grain with our pencils. So I'm working in between the leaves of the plant, which is called a pokeweed, that grows in this area. Now I'm adding 570.9, which phthalo blue, which is a lighter color. I'm also going to add some Rembrandt 100.5 white on top of the light phthalo blue. Now I'm using my reference to duplicate the wood color and grain. The wood is bleached by the sun, this log. That's a favorite place for the wolves to sit. Now I'm using the darker color, which is 505.8 ultramarine blue light. Being careful not to go over the leaves, as careful as possible, the leaves and stem. Adding some more white, and I think that's the 570.9 phthalo blue, and I'm going to add some yellow ochre with 227.7. Then I'm going to take a small blender and blend these colors together. Go around the shapes of the leaves and berries as much as possible. Avoid getting color on them. Use a clean blender. You don't want to mix black in with that. Now after blending that, I decided to add a little more white. So that's what I'm doing here with the 100.5 Rembrandt white. I'm using mine on the edge. You can use it on the end. And the phthalo blue, the 570.9. And again, using my blender. The more pastel that's on the paper, the easier it is to blend. So it's going to take a few applications of color to get it as even as we want it. But we're also going to go over it with our pencils. And that will help smooth it out, and we'll add the wood grain. the log has two parts. This is in the back, the behind side, and the wolf is laying on the front side. This is the 570.9 phthalo blue. I'm adding a little more color there. Now that we have some color down, I'm going to start to build the wood grain. Here I'm outlining the top of the log with the 770 Payne's Gray. So we're going to use the Payne's Gray, the Carbothello 390 Prussian Blue. Now I'm starting to work on the grain. So we need to be careful that the grain, the lines that we add, curve over the log. So very important. That tells the viewer that the log is round. This is 706, Carbothello 706, gray number 4, which is medium gray. And this is black, 750. We're also going to use the Derwent P240 Violet Oxide. So I'm going around the leaf shape. If I've colored over a little bit of the leaf, as you can see, I outlined it. And then I'm going to blend this with the blender. That's starting to look like I envision it. Starting to have some wood grain there. I'm going to draw a shadow under the berries with the 770 Payne's Gray. And I'm going to blend that out into the log as well. We can always go back and add more if we need it. But that is already creating the illusion that we want. So I'm going to add some white in the wood with the edge of the 100.5 Rembrandt. A little more white. And going back in with the 770 Payne's Gray. And the Prussian Blue. So I'm just going to work back and forth between these colors and blend them. Now I'm going to use the Payne's Gray 770 to put the shadow under the vine and under the berries. Since that's a violet gray, that is a better choice than black for shadows. We don't want our shadows to be harsh. So that's the perfect color for that. I'm going to add a little more white. And underneath the leaf area. And blend it with the blender. Adding some yellow ochre with a 227-7. Some white over it to kind of lighten it. And that really adds nice texture to our wood. Continuing to add the wood grain with the 770, we're going down the side of the log. I'm following my reference photo, trying to duplicate the grain and then blend it with the blender. Adding a little more color to make it a little darker. Now I've switched to my 750 black to make it a little darker. And finger blending it. Here I've zoomed out a little so you can see what I'm doing, and I'm adding a lighter streak with the 570.9 phthalo blue and blending it. And now we're going to work on these leaves a little bit. For the leaves, I'm using 4 colors. I'm using 595 leaf green deep for the dark color, 585 olive green, and 575 leaf green for the middle values, 570 for the bright spring color, and the highlight will be 560 leaf green pale. So I've started this leaf with a middle value of Carbothello 585. I'm adding 575 into the 585, and then the 570 leaf green middle for the bright spring green in the center. Then the darkest green, which is 595 leaf green deep, I'm adding around the top and the outside right edge. And I'll blend that with my little blender. And add a little more 570. And then I'm going to use the 560 leaf green pale to draw the stem that's down the center. Add that bright spot of color. Now I'm doing the next leaf. I'm drawing this in with 585 Carbothello olive green. Then I'll add some 575 leaf green. And then 570 leaf green middle. And darken the tip with 595. Just kind of finger blend it. And we'll do the same with the next leaf. I'm drawing that with 585 olive green. This leaf curls over. The top of it curls over. So that is where the little curl is. So I'm outlining that with 585 and darkening underneath that area. I'm going to color the top with 570 middle green. Outside edge with 575 leaf green. I'll darken that tip while I'm thinking about it with 595 and also darken the shadow where the leaf turns. Then add some 570 leaf green middle, a bright springy green, and blend it with my little blender. Brighten that top area with 560 leaf green pale and add the stems. Now we're going to do the stem of the pokeberry. I'm going to outline the stem with Derwent 210 dark fuchsia and highlight the top of the stem with Derwent 190 coral. I'm going to outline the berries with 385 violet deep and fill in the berries with either 335 magenta. In this case, we can also use Derwent 210 dark fuchsia and highlight it with white. Here again, I'm using the 385 violet deep, the 335 magenta, either the Derwent 190 coral or the Derwent 210 dark fuchsia, and highlight it with white. You can also use the Rembrandt 100.5 to add a dot of white for the highlight on the berries, which is also very nice. I'm deepening the shadow underneath the berries with Carbothello 390 Prussian Blue. And blend them with my little blender. I'm adding some darker color to the leaves with 595 Leaf Green Deep, and also using the leaf green to add a shadow to the stem that goes down the center of the leaf. And I'm going to continue to use these 4 colors to paint the leaves. I'm outlining the top of this little leaf with 595. And then I'm going to fill it in with Carbothello 585 Olive Green. And add a bit of lighter green with 575 and 570 Leaf Middle Spring Green to carry on the stem all the way down to the vine. I'll blend those together by adding Leaf Green Pale 560 over the top. This one I'm painting with 575 Carbothello and darkening the tip with the 595. I'm adding some additional 575 in the middle, lightening that up with 570. And blend those together. And draw a stem down the center with 560 Leaf Green Pale and darken the tip with 595. And we'll continue painting all the leaves this way with these 4 colors. I'm just going to add in some other shapes. It's 595, dark green. And then I'm adding 585, which is olive green, and 570, which is the leaf green middle. And I'm blending those a little bit with my finger and reshaping it with a pencil. .585. So you can see this is why I wasn't really worried if we get a little blue on the leaves, because we can shape that out with a green. And blend that a little bit. .575. And .570 leaf green middle. And lightening that up with the .560 leaf green pale. Then you can go back and darken the tip after you're finished to see if you like the way that looks. You can continue to add additional shapes. I'm using the .585 olive green for that, and then lightening those areas with .560 leaf green pale. I'm just randomly adding these in. And then this leaf, I'm using .595, and in the dark, this is one of our larger leaves in the painting. This is .585. And .570 leaf green middle. And then using the very bright .560 leaf green pale. I'm going to blend those together. Outline the berries with the .595 and add a stem with .595 and highlight the stem with .560. Darken that value a little more. I'm adding shadow underneath the berries and some wood grain with Carbothello 390 Prussian Blue. And I'm blending that with my little blender, and I'm blending it in the direction that the wood grain goes. I'm outlining the berries using Carbothello 385 Violet Deep. And then I'm going to fill in the middle of the berry with 335 Magenta. You can highlight the berries with Derwent P190 Coral, or you can highlight them with the Derwent 240 Violet Oxide. And then put a dot of white with Carbothello 100, or you can use, for brighter light, the Rembrandt 100.5. I'm going to continue to finish those berries and also add some brighter magenta with the 335 on top of the vine. I'm adding the highlight. Underneath the berries, I'm going to deepen the shadow with 390 Carbothello Prussian Blue, and I'm also going to put some of the color in to put the wood grain to accentuate that along the edge. And blend that with my little blender. I hope you've enjoyed part 3 of this video series on Lazy Afternoon, and I hope you will join me on part 4 as we continue to paint the log.